Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, Angela, I was just talking. I don't think anybody heard me.
I was worried it was me. This headset, I don't understand it. Sometimes it does not work.
No,
So,
it was me. I had it muted and didn't realize it. But we're live, so hey, everybody.
hey, happy Wednesday. I hope everybody still has their fingers from the 4th.
I know, right? Um, so everybody that has been joining us, you know the drill. First, we want to make sure you can hear and see us. So type one if you can hear us, two if you can see us, and one and two if you can hear and see us. A lot of people have been excited and reaching out about this one specifically. I
Good.
think people are confused as to how this is even possible, number one. And then I think people don't realize like what how big of an issue it creates for the industry as a whole.
Hmm.
Okay, I see some ones and twos coming in. And let me make sure. So they must, that's on LinkedIn. Okay. So we should be good. Um, I always just like to check it, like see it visually on LinkedIn
I
because
don't blame you. It'd be silly to take an hour and a half, and nothing really ever got
yeah,
to me.
I've done that before, which is why I always check now. I've literally done that. So don't want to do that again. Okay, so I see a bunch of ones and twos. Great, perfect. So thank you everybody for joining us. We have the amazing Angela Roberts here again today. You laugh, but you seriously, you are so amazing. Um,
You're gonna so get tired of me before it's over
no,
with.
I'm not. I never get enough of you.
Oh, you're sweet.
Um, so thank you for joining us again. Everybody's really excited. And for anybody that has any questions, you already know you have lots of questions you want to get out. Please drop them in the comments because we take them as they roll in.
Mhm.
So whenever drop the comments, feel free. We'll answer. We'll get to your question eventually. But to start us off, Angela, how about you kind of explain and talk about what exactly is a fraudulent CRA?
Absolutely. And I will be very careful to note that there is a huge difference between an individual who is committing fraud and an individual who may just be embellishing his or her
Yeah, that's a
resume.
great point. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and I'm not saying that it's okay to embellish either, but
Yeah,
it is different.
it's
It's a
different.
big difference.
Yeah.
For me, a fraudulent candidate is someone who has falsified all or part of their credentials, and that could include an education. It could include stating they've worked at companies where they didn't work. It could state that they've done things they haven't done, more so than just embellishing, right? But and there, I mean, it you can really dig into each one of those, but those are kind of the big three where we look whenever we're looking at a resume in general, because that's always your starting point, isn't it? Is the education. First of all, is it a real institution? And there
Mhm.
are ways to determine that. And there's a huge list on the FBI site that speaks to diploma mills. That was a really big deal. There's been books published about it and all of that, but there are institutions that are not real educational institutions, not accredited at all, but you can pay a fee to get your PhD, and they'll actually answer the phone and say, "Yes, you got her PhD from here." So, I mean,
From
it
what
starts.
website? What website is this where you find?
There's a couple of them. If you go out to Wikipedia, it's a really good place, and it'll kind of like point to it. But there was a really big deal. Axel, what was his last name? I can find it in one of my articles, but he was an FBI detective, and he was given the responsibility to go and start digging into the diploma mills that existed all across, not just in the United States, but all across the globe. And he's come up with a list of diploma mills, and they're proven fraudulent institutions. They're not real educational centers. In some instances, they speak to real world learning, and if you pass a test, they'll give you like a PhD or a master's or something like that. The real reality is, if you got a credit card and you want a PhD, you can buy one. The estimate from the FBI actually indicates that more than 50% of individuals who state they have a PhD actually don't.
No way.
Yeah, there have been,
50%?
and we've seen like some of the individuals that were like, going out and just to prove that it's real, get PhDs for their dogs. I mean, it's it's a really big deal. And there's been a lot of information. Actually, there's a gentleman that's in my network, and I'm not going to name him here unless he joins. I did send him the invite to this, but he gave me a link to a television program. It's kind of like Dateline in the United States. I don't know what it's called in Canada, but it's similar type program to where they were actually revealing a specific, very big institution in Canada. And he said, I went out and looked, and he said, you would not believe the directors and the senior level leaders in our industry that state they have a degree from this institution. And it's been proven by the FBI that it is not a real educational institution. And if you go out and you do searches on it, you're going to see big CEOs that said they got a degree when they didn't. Right? You went to school, but you didn't get a degree. That's one. But then have said that they've gotten a degree from diploma mills. They're not even real educational institutions. So
That is crazy. I thought we were gonna talk about experience. I didn't know 50% of the population is faking it
yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
degrees. That is
50% with the
crazy.
PhDs, yeah, for sure. 50% is what the FBI estimates.
For the
50 for
PhD.
PhDs. People who say
That
they
is
have it really don't.
insane.
So so that is one thing we do when we get resumes in, obviously, that well, I have a research team that all they do whenever they get resumes in is they take a look. They research is if the institution, educational institution is real, is accredited, and offers the degree you've stated you've had. The other thing is there are a lot of fake companies out there, companies that have been created, websites, and it's easier and easier to create your own website now, but websites that have been created, indicating that they're in the industry, CRO or sponsor or what have you. You can fake Google into giving them a location. You can Google the location, and it's a field or it's like some coffee shop in New York or whatever. But that's definitely a really big deal, and it happens a lot. And there's ways that we can go out and tell that the company is not a real company. Or they'll say they work for a company before or after the company was in existence. Um, or, or they'll say they work for several companies that are now all out of business. And it's really hard to do employment verification for those companies because there's no HR. You can't call
Yeah.
anymore. And so, that's kind of a difficult, it's not necessarily fraudulent, but it kind of coincides with what we want to talk about today. Is it's unfortunate if you really work for 3, 4, 5 companies in a row that went out of business, but it makes you look real suspicious.
Yeah. I was
So
just about to
mhm,
say, what about the people that are legit, but that's their situation?
it's hard, isn't it? Yeah. So
Alicia says, "Oh my," right? That's "Oh my" says it all.
Yeah, yeah.
Susan says crazy.
Mhm.
Um, and then I don't know why it doesn't always show the person on here, but Valerie says, when I worked in HR, I ran into people who had lied about education, who had
Yeah.
several. Oh, wow, working for us as engineers. That is crazy. And then
Yeah.
she said people lie about military service and right. Oh my God.
I have not written about the military service before, but I see that too. And I think because every man in my family went to the military. My twin brother was the commander over the Joint Special Operations Team. He was part of the planning for the 9/11 war and all of that stuff. So, whenever I see people that have served, I have an affinity for them, and I think a lot of people do. We are Americans, born and raised,
Yes,
proud, all of that. But I see it a lot
that is
yeah,
crazy. Like
yeah,
the military, like, come on, people.
yeah, yeah.
The military. In my mind, there legal consequences when you lie about the military?
I don't know if there would be or not. I haven't researched that, but I know that in some states there are legal consequences lying about your education.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and some of the states are just like little misdemeanors and fines, but then there are other states to where it's jail time.
For lying about
Mhm.
the degree?
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh my
Absolutely.
God. That is
Mhm.
That's taking it to another level. Jakia says, I didn't know people were going to that. I didn't either, Jakia.
Well,
I
I'll
didn't.
tell you this too, Jakia, it is organized. This isn't just the fact that Angela's gotten a crooked pencil out and she's going to make a bunch of stuff up for her resume. There's groups, I'm not going to use the word cult, right? But there are definitely organizations, if you will, that offer these services to individuals who want to break into the business. They'll teach them how to fraud their resume. They
Yeah.
offer classes and teach you how to pass the interviews, and it's all for money, but they'll offer themselves as references. That's another really big one. We probably, at candidates who get to that stage, we rule out about 40% of candidates that get to the reference stage. And I would say half of those are because they flunked the references, and then the other half is because the references were fraud. You got people that will say, hey, look, we'll say that you worked for this company. I'll serve as your reference. I mean, it's very organized. It's like groups of people that kind of work together to do it.
I knew that part, but it's just like, oh my God, this is taken to a whole new level. Valerie says, who would be bold enough to lie? Right. Especially, I'm just going back to the military. And then now I didn't even know you could do jail time.
Yeah.
I'm going to start submitting all my stuff with my degrees.
I went whenever I started doing that, and that was actually the topic that I spoke about at the ACRP, the global ACRP, whenever I was invited to speak there. And I went back and made sure that, okay, so I was obtaining my master's, but I didn't get my master's. I don't want anybody to think I finished it, right? Because I don't want anybody
Right.
to think.
You got to put it big and bold.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Um, Susan
Oh,
said,
they found the Wikipedia site.
yep, she
Good.
said she just Googled it. Wow. And then Lachelle said, yes, this is a huge problem in the industry right now. Yes, Lachelle. And it seems to be getting worse, right, Angela?
Yeah, it
Like,
really is, and and I mean, they make a lot of money. I have yet to figure it out. I mean, and it can go to the other extreme. We had a med tech. Hope you're not on the line. Sorry, Miss Med Tech, but we had a med tech Monday that applied for several of our open senior CRA positions.
and
Zero
she's never
clinical
been to
research.
CRA.
Never been in clinical research. She hadn't even been a coordinator.
Oh, wow.
Nothing, right? And so we see that quite a bit, and so what we do is we save those applications and those resumes, because I will tell you, a lot of times what will happen is 6 months or 9 months from now, we'll get another resume from that person, a new application. I don't know if they fall and bump their heads and think we're just a completely different, maybe they're disorganized and they don't know we're the same company. I don't know, but it'll be the same person. We get another resume, and now it's got like 5 years experience at PPD with the foundation at MD Anderson. It's like that perfect profile.
Yeah.
And we see that quite a bit, unfortunately. So
They probably think or don't realize that you guys save and track this
we
information.
do.
That's
We save
probably
and
what
track
it
all of
is.
it. Yeah. My sourcers will tell you that right now, when we first started talking about this, we found in our database about 20 to 21% of the candidates were fraudulent. They had falsified all or part of their credentials. Now, my sourcers are saying for those individuals who are applying through our portal, now this is not an indication of our entire database, but for people who are applying for our positions, they're estimating that 60%
That is
are
just
fraudulent. Mhm.
ridiculous.
Mhm.
Let me see. Valerie, this is
Yep.
Valerie. She says this was a big
Mhm.
tick. There was a big TikTok creator who did fake references.
Mhm. Yeah. That one was a
So
really
this
big
is
one.
so the fake industry is an industry.
Yeah. Yeah,
In
it's a
and
good
of
way of
itself.
putting it.
It's a whole industry.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. That's exactly what it is. And there's money in it. They're teaching the classes on how to interview. They're offering themselves up as a reference. They're offering degrees for cold hard cash. I have this vision of some geek sitting in a corner in this empty office space answering the phone going, "Oh yeah, Isla Roberts, she worked here from these days to these days. Awesome."
That is crazy. And how so most of well, I don't know about the smaller companies because I only mostly work for the larger CROs, but all of them are using what is it, work day or work? Like you can't even call them and confirm anymore. They have that, that standard work day, or what is it
I
called?
think it is Workday or something like
Workday,
that.
something like that. And when they pulled it for me, it had like every job on there that I've ever worked.
Mhm.
Um,
But
even
as
though
perms, not as a contractor.
so it doesn't include contract.
Well, contractors don't typically make it into the HR system. Contractors go through procurement 9 times out of 10, or they go through an
Mm,
agency like
okay.
ours. So the agreement that we have with the clients, we provide a service. Now, obviously, our clients get to pick the consultants that they use, and we
Right.
hold our consultants accountable, but those consultants aren't hired by the company. And so the consultants don't usually get into the HR system. So you can't do an employment verification because they're not employees.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, well, that's good. That's one thing to or good thing I guess to know. But then also, so how do contractors prove their work history?
That's tough. It is. I mean, and that's the plight that we live every day. Being able to maintain history is really good because we will see where an individual will they can, sent a resume to us 2 or 3 years ago stating they had 3, 4 years at PPD and now they've moved on to Covance or whatever. And now they weren't working at PPD during that time frame. They were a coordinator somewhere. So they really did fake it until they made it. And if they were a perm, it's a little bit easier. If companies will do background checks, if they'll do employment verification, if they'll do references. Whenever I'm at the conferences, there are a lot of people that say they don't waste their time doing that. They expect people to give references that are going to have them walking on water, and I will tell you that is not what happens. Not if you do it right, anyway. But
So a lot of companies they don't even call or email or anything with
mm-mm,
regards to references.
mm-mm. No, or
Mm,
if they do, it's just a straight email. We get references sometimes to where we ask for 2 to 3 supervisors and 2 to 3 sites because we work with CRAs. We want site references too. Sites are happy to tell you too. By the way, if if you showed up on time, if you stayed as long as you were supposed to, if you knew the protocol, if you were responsive, all of those types of things. But you'll see where all of the supervisors are personal emails. You Google the phone numbers, they don't belong to anybody. All the sites, personal email, they don't belong to anybody. And then we do digital footprint analysis on the references and we can't confirm that they are who they say they are. And most companies, whenever they do references, they send an email out. I get them all the time asking for a verification. And if those are fake Gmails and they're all going to the person who's pretending to use them as
right.
references, they're easy to respond to. Now, we actually schedule time and speak to our references. So that's how we catch a lot of fraudulence in the reference process
Okay.
because they're open-ended questions. They're usually 20, 30-minute phone calls to where we really dig into what were the endpoints of the project, what were the challenges, what were the metrics of the report submissions, all of the things that are relevant for the industry. And if someone doesn't know enough about the industry, it becomes very clear very quickly. So,
Okay. So it's also kind of like a vetting process for the reference too, to confirm that the
mhm.
reference actually knows what they're talking about to make sure that they actually are who they say they are.
That is absolutely correct. We
Mm,
not only check the digital footprint of the candidate to confirm that there's no discrepancies there, we also check the history. So if we have old copies of their LinkedIn, because every time we go source a candidate or look at their profile, we scrape the copy of that LinkedIn profile. So if it changes or if their resumes change over a time period, we compare every single time we receive a new resume to make sure there have been no changes.
mm,
Mhm.
wow. Some people said, Jakia said it's Workday. Many companies are using Workday.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then somebody else said work number. It's work something.
I think it might be Workday.
I
Yeah,
think it is too.
yeah.
Someone else says they do assessments. Yeah, companies are doing assessments
We have
now.
clients doing that too, and presentation interviews to where they'll give you a topic and give
They're
you
doing
an
that
hour
now.
to
Yeah.
prepare. Mhm,
Yep,
absolutely.
I've seen
Mhm.
that too. Lachelle says we have an even had instances where these organizations have switched out candidates, meaning
Mhm.
one person has done an initial video interview and a completely different person showed up to the face to face. That is
It's
crazy.
yeah, we've heard of that. I've had people call me and say, "How do y'all handle this?" Well, we do video interviews. We take a screenshot, and then whenever you go to interview with the client, that's the screenshot. And some of our clients actually ask us to gather a copy of the driver's license and send that over with our screenshot.
I've
So,
I've had that too. I've also had them say bring a copy of your license and or passport to the interview to
mhm.
confirm. Somebody has also asked for paycheck stubs before too.
Oh, really?
Yep, to confirm that that you work out.
They are just trying to negotiate yours. That's rude. They're just trying to
Well, no,
negotiate
no,
you
they'll let you
$100.
black out the actual amount. They said it's
Oh,
fine to black
good.
that out, but they just that's their way of confirming that you
That you
actually
work.
worked there because it's like I guess people are beating all the other little
Mm.
systems that y'all have in place. So if you the pay, which I guess somebody probably could fake that too, right? The paycheck stuff.
I
If
don't
they
know. I mean, if they're
if
really
they're doing
good
all
at
this other stuff,
yeah.
they could
Well, and that still doesn't confirm the start and end dates. It just confirms that they worked at PPD at some point. I
right.
mean,
With company, it seems like people are doing all of the above. They're asking for the license, the passport. They're in a few minutes. They're going to ask for your W-2s. They're
birth
going
certificate,
to right
your shoe
everything.
size,
They're
how
going
much
to ask
do you
for a
weigh?
few your mom's number and confirm that you that you are who you are. Family members. It's
How
like
long did it
interviewing the
take for you to
right.
be born? Yeah.
Right. It's like trying to join the FBI at this point. Like they're
Yeah.
investigating and asking family members. This is out of control.
I think so. I mean, this is and I feel like I'm so tainted, and I have to ask my team for a sanity check every once in a while. I'm like, have I just gotten to the point to where I see fraudulence everywhere I turn, or is there really fraudulence everywhere that I turn?
I mean it's out of control, right? Susan says, wow, need pictures of applications now. Apparently, but even that is like according to what Lachelle said, it's like they might have one picture on the application and then it still might be. It's just I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was this bad.
Yeah.
Someone
Well,
said
yeah.
no.
No.
I know,
Well,
right?
and it's such a independent role. And if you never have to go into the office ever, and now post COVID you don't have face to face. There was a CRA that we vetted, I don't know, about a year ago, and he's decided to start this company where he's going to organize face to face interviews between CRAs and the clients, and I'm like, good luck with that, because post COVID we don't do face to face. Why would a company pay for Angela to travel out to Seattle, Washington for a face to face interview whenever I'm not going to have to work in Seattle, Washington? My sites are going to be in Florida. You have this kind of thing. You've just got to put those kind of venues in place. But
But they might have to go back to it though, right?
who knows? Yeah, maybe.
To
Mhm.
help weed them out. That's one good way. When I did when I was in my PhD program, which I did not finish by the way. I just I got my
Just to be
master's.
clear.
I left early. I got my master's, everybody. I did not have a PhD. Um, but when but when I was applying to school and interviewing, and for the people that have a PhD that's online, it's a little bit different process. Just so you know, we had to actually interview for the PhD program. So first you had to get invited for an interview, and then you still had to get accepted into the program. But the interviews lasted all weekend. We came in on a Thursday, and it went through it went through Sunday. They wanted to know you were
No
prepared.
kidding.
Yes,
Lord
Thursday
have
through
mercy.
Sunday, and, like, one of the days, it was, like, literally all day back to back. It would be, like, 30 minutes to an hour, and you would start, like, in the morning. They would give you a schedule. You would start in the morning, and we just went around the whole college campus where, like, the different professors that you had to interview with, and I think the most I had in one day, I think was, like, 7 different professors I had to interview with, and so you do that during the day, then you have dinners at night at, like, one of the professors' house. Of course, they're interviewing there, you have lunches. And so it was like literally a whole weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. So maybe they're gonna have to start going to that.
I don't know. I mean, there definitely are ways to sidestep it, but it's not quick. It
It's
takes
not.
a minute. And for these companies, like you said, these smaller sponsors, and even some of the small to medium sized CROs, I'll get these phone calls and you get like one HR person, or maybe there's two. They post a position. I mean, I've said this in one of our other sessions. It is nothing for us to get 600, 700 applicants for one position. And so when we get, I mean, and okay, I'm telling you 60% of them are fraudulent. How are you as a single person, or maybe two people in your HR department, you don't have the bandwidth to go through that?
You don't.
You certainly don't have the history on those candidates to be able to compare to see if what they're saying they did today is what they said they did 2 years ago. And by the way, these HR people are not just interviewing CRAs. They're interviewing directors and data
Yeah, all
people
these
and
other roles.
secretaries. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's overwhelming. It is very overwhelming. And I get really frustrated because I feel like, these people are wasting my time, my God given time. It's so precious. But yet, you don't want to just jump to conclusions. You want to
Yeah.
make sure that you
Yeah.
never tag anyone as fraudulent unless you prove it. So then you got to spend the time taking the time to go prove it. It's very obnoxious.
I I can see that. And then we also, at a certain point, we can talk about how it's negatively impacting the industry and
Mm,
hurting real people, especially the people that are trying to break in now, right?
that's right.
Jeffrey says, "Hi, Jasmine and Angela. For my current contracted position, the references were not checked by either the recruiting agency or academic institution."
I'm not surprised. It really doesn't. And I told you this on the phone last week, Jasmine. I had right before our session last week, I got an employment verification, and I looked up the candidate. I'm like, I
Okay,
don't
I
remember.
remember that.
I looked at the name. I'm like, I don't recognize this person's name. And I looked them up in our database, and they flunked our process in 2018. We had never represented her because she didn't get through our process. But yet she's got on her resume that she's worked for us for I don't know how long. And so then they're asking me to verify her employment. I wonder how many companies would just not have ever done that, Jesse, to the
Yeah,
point, right?
and that's probably what she was banking on, right?
Maybe, yeah. You get a
Because I
reputable company, and I worked there for 3 years. It had to be, because
yeah,
I say that all the time. Gosh, if you can hang with Parkdale for 3 years, you must be awesome, right? So you look at that, right? So, I mean, I don't think a lot of companies do.
it doesn't sound like it. So yeah, to your point, Jesse. I think this is Valerie. Yeah, Valerie says, I'm blessed that a lot of people in the industry know me or recognize my name. And that goes back to what we've been talking about, like the first couple of sessions with branding yourself.
Mhm.
Because once you establish a certain brand and reputation, then people, they will know you and they won't
They do.
question you. So that's a good point too.
And it needs to be a unified brand. If we're
A
taking a
unified,
look at, that's the key, is making sure that it's unified, making sure
yeah,
that the story aligns. Because when we do a digital footprint analysis, if you've been a coordinator somewhere, and people probably don't know this, but if you've ever worked for MD Anderson, you are still in their employee directory. So when someone has on their perfect LinkedIn profile that they started out at MD Anderson, the first thing I do is go do 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 do, and I look it up on the employee directory to see if they ever worked there. You got to have all of your ducks in a row. All of the digital footprint has to match, and it has to be unified. And your LinkedIn can't be lazy. It needs to match your resume. The dates need to be in sync. The titles need to be in sync. The tasks need to be in sync. The education needs to be in sync. I
yeah,
can't tell you how many times we'll get one education in English on LinkedIn and a bachelor of science in microbiology on the resume, right? So, I mean, it needs to be a unified digital
I
footprint.
just can't. I'm just baffled because that also reflects like that example specifically. If you're not paying attention to detail, you're not going to make a good CRA
That's
anyway. So
exactly right.
these things are representative of what, let's say you do pass, or they're representative of can you really do this job and be a
Can you
CRA?
write a
And
report?
right, and if you can't even get that straight and make sure the resume, the LinkedIn, all that is lined up, then you're not going to really be a good CRA anyways, because attention to
Mhm.
detail is key.
I absolutely agree.
Um,
Absolutely.
let's see. I think this is, I don't know why it doesn't show Valerie. She says a big CRO at least has one staff person in a state. Face to face is possible. Sometimes they do. Um, I don't know. I guess all the companies, they say we had a person in every state, but I feel like there has to be a state where maybe like they might not. But I don't know. Maybe IQVIA, PPD, maybe had somebody in every state. I don't know.
Maybe, but I will tell you, if you're hiring consultants, all of our experience with the big CROs or consultant is a one and done interview.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now perms, obviously, if they're going to bring you in as a perm, I can understand why face to face maybe makes a little more sense. But it starts becoming cost prohibitive at some
Yeah.
point. It's
Yeah.
very expensive to
Yeah.
bring somebody in, and it's not even about the flights and the hotels and all of that, but you're also, whenever you're bringing people in for face to face, you've got to corral your team to hire, that's doing the interviews, and so you're like taking up 4 or 5 operation managers' time where they're interviewing rather than doing their job, and
Yeah.
there's a soft cost associated with that as well. Not to
Yeah.
mention the fact that most of these people have never been trained to interview.
Yeah. And not to mention they don't want to interview.
They don't.
So
Yeah.
face to face is
Mhm.
like, oh God, now we got to do face to face interviews. Randall says degrees don't mean anything if you don't have on-site experience.
I think that I'm with you in the degree space. I care less about the degree and more about the experience. With
Yeah,
that,
I've
yeah,
seen that too.
mhm,
Because even with study coordinators that have a lot of experience, they want that, but no degree. They'll want that study coordinator quicker than the person with no experience, but they have a
I
master's or
agree.
a PhD or whatever.
I
Um,
absolutely agree. Now, with that being said, we do have clients that have firm requirements for bachelor's in science.
yeah, you do
Um,
have those.
Yeah, yeah, and that
Yeah.
really I'm not gonna say it stinks, I kinda get it, and I will tell you, for some of these really, really complex projects, sometimes having a medical background does help understand the protocols whenever you have to deal with all the comorbidities.
Mhm.
I mean, you know that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But 20 years experience in oncology is going to trump a 5-year degree anytime.
Any day, any
Mhm,
day. You can have 2 PhDs.
mhm.
You can
Real
have a
ones,
PhD and an MD.
real ones.
Right, and they're still not gonna trump that coordinator
I
with
agree.
20 years of experience. They're just not.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Um, okay, I see some. I don't know if we should, Randall. Yeah, that may have been true in the past, but I'm now seeing where some CROs are hiring college graduates with no experience. Well, that's a good point, Leland. I have seen companies hire college graduates, and PPD. I don't know if they still have that bridge program with UNC Wilmington. You remember they
I
had that bridge
remember they
program?
did have a bridge program. I can't remember if I think they still have something, but
I
I don't know if it's associated with a specific university.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do it with UNC. I think it was Wilmington because that's where they started the first company.
Wilmington, North Carolina?
Yeah.
Possibly. It's not a very big program there, though. That would be, I mean, it's interesting if they would still be doing it there. I mean, why, if you're going to partner with a company, why not do it with a company like Stanford or somewhere like that that actually has a really, really, really strong clinical research management program? We're starting,
Well,
we
I
mentioned.
think it was because they are close, and I want to
Mhm.
say they started like a clinical research program. Don't quote me. Somebody look it up. But I think they started like a clinical research program, and that's why there was the collaboration because they were both in Wilmington. I know I
Interesting.
didn't make this up. Um,
It
but they
probably,
were,
I mean, it's probably true. I think it's kinda cool actually if they've done stuff like that.
yeah, they were doing that where they were hiring the graduates straight into but they had like a full in-depth CRA program. But even still, I've seen new graduates get hired as CRAs. Was working with one where that was literally her first job. Like she'd never worked at McDonald's or nothing. Needless to say, she did not make it.
Mm-mm.
That is like a huge shift to go from never having a job, because think about all of the people just think about the day-to-day like monitoring visits, right? But there's a whole nother job, admin job behind the scenes that you got to take care of with time, with expense reports, with emails, with all the things, right? Booking your travel. And if you
Everything.
haven't even like served fries, I feel bad for you.
Well, and I've told you the statistics that we have, individuals that enter into the clinical research field, we give them at least 2 years. If they don't have 2 years in the clinical research field, we don't touch them because it's like an 80% dropout rate.
It's high, right? And I think people don't think about that. They just get so caught up in like the perks and the salary, the income, all that. But y'all, this is a job. Like, yes,
And
you
it's
can,
important.
and it's important. And yes, you can love research, you can love science, you can love medicine, and all this can excite you. It really can. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to do your job.
I
And
agree.
it is a lot, like the emails alone. We talk about this. Jakia joined. Emails alone, that's a job. Just keeping up with your emails, right?
I agree. I wish I could figure out how to keep up with my emails.
I said we need an assistant just to handle the emails.
I agree.
Like
I
the
absolutely
emails
agree.
alone will take somebody out. Cause it's
Yeah.
it's like as soon as you think you cleared your inbox, you get up and use the bathroom, you got 20 more.
It's
It's like
like it begets more email. I'm like, I'm just gonna quit talking to you people because you have to respond back. Stop responding back.
right? I mean, Zakia says our jobs are not for the faint. No, they are not at
I can
all,
agree with
right?
that too. Yeah, it always sounds really good and rosy, isn't it? But the CRA job is a hard job. And then you've got I'm actually I've got one sent through to for my team to make sure I didn't write anything stupid in it. But I'm getting ready to republish the 5 myths, like the 5 myths, outdated search myths. And one of the things that I put in there is that, we've got like right now the economy's not real good right now in our industry, and we've got clinical trial managers being laid off and companies shutting down, and we've got CTMs that are applying for CRA jobs. Now here's the deal: a CRA job is a tough job. If you do it because you love it, it's not so tough. If you do it because you just need it because you got to make the bills, it's a tough job. And so you got to love it or you're just not going to live it. It's not going to happen. It's too much.
Yes, a lot. And I was showing some of the comments. Somebody says it's also a lifestyle.
Mhm.
Yeah, somebody else said clinical research is a lifestyle.
Mm.
Jakia says, let's not talk about all the trackers. We have to manage. We need a tracker for the trackers. Yes. We were joking about that. You do. It's like so many moving pieces. And not y'all, not just the CRAs, any position in the industry. If
Mhm.
you're a study coordinator, a CTA, if you're on the startup
The
team,
one
if
who's
you're
managing the
a manager,
TMF, can you imagine how
DMS
organized you have to
specialist.
be?
Yes, it doesn't matter what role you're in. This
Mhm.
industry in general is not for the faint. It
I
really
agree.
is not. Those are some good comments. I got I got lost.
I was just trying to find it myself.
Yeah, let me find the comment. I
Randall
did
did say
see
CRCs make better CRAs, and I absolutely agree.
I agree that
Um,
too.
I absolutely agree. I love, 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 love it whenever I see a CRA that's got a coordinating foundation. Y'all don't take that off your resume ever. And don't hide it with a pretend CRA position. That coordinating gig is going to make you more competitive than you realize. It's huge, huge to have
It
that on
is,
your
and not only competitive, but prepared. I think people
resume.
forget about that piece. Everybody just wants to jump to CRA, but you
Hmm.
want to last. And if
Yes.
you actually want to like actually last and not just get the job and get fired, get some preparation, study coordinator, CTA, um, study startup specialist,
Oh
TMS,
Lord, yeah, that's such a
all
big
those
one right
roles,
there.
yes.
Hmm.
Get some basic research. Even if you have to volunteer, it doesn't matter if you're not getting paid. Experience is experience.
Agree.
Someone
Yeah.
says, "Y'all, it's worth the time and money to do thorough interviews."
I agree with that too. Absolutely. But with that being said, for any hiring managers that may be listening, there are steps you can take and should take before you waste your time on the interview.
Yep, I agree with that too.
Mhm.
Yep. Because
Yeah.
there is to a point, because you can get to a point where the money is not worth it. Like you gotta let that candidate go.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Tori says Fortria, formerly LabCorp. I didn't know that that was the name.
That is a new thing. I got a reference the other day where I was like, "What in the world is Fortria?" And I looked it up, and yeah, it's an acquisition. So, mm,
So LabCorp took Covance, and now LabCorp is
mhm.
Fortria.
Let me look it up on our client listing. Yep, Fortria LabCorp. We had it documented as to when it happened because we track all of that as well. So that,
Oh my God, all these acquisitions.
oh
Well, she
yeah,
says,
that's a job in of itself too, is keeping up with this client listing with all of that.
right? Oh my
Yeah.
God. But
Uh,
she says, let me get
it's
back
been
to
this
it.
year. Yeah, it was this year. Hmm.
So it really is Fortria now.
Yeah, February 9th, 2023 is when it was announced.
Oh wow. Okay, y'all. So no more Covance or LabCorp is Fortria. But
Hmm.
she says that they have a program that train inexperienced people for in-house positions with a track to become a field CRA. Yep. I
I
think
like
they, well, I don't know what this Fortria thing, but when I left, they still had it. That was another good program. Most of the big CROs, they have some type of something where there's
that.
formal
Hmm.
or informal. And a lot of the mid-sized ones, they're getting in now too.
Agree.
Um,
Absolutely. Hmm.
Let me see who else I missed. Brandel says current clinical research manager with 6 years experience in public health degree, no shot. I'm not sure what you mean, Randall.
Well, now,
Explain.
Randall, if you're asking if there's a shot that you can step back into a CRA role, I can say absolutely, absolutely,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, for
If
sure.
it's what you, if you're telling me that's your passion, what this individual, the clinical trial manager that applied for our open positions, she had an objective on her resume that said to find a clinical trial management position with a well reputed blah blah blah, and she's applying to all of our CRA positions. Okay, well, an objective is the death of a resume. Y'all take your objectives off your resume, put a professional summary on there instead, because it's going to make you trip and fall on your face. Do not include an objective. It is never a good
Oh, he
idea.
says can't get into CRA.
Oh, so if you're going, are you a manager at a sponsor? And then, because I love it whenever a manager wants to step back into a sponsor role, I mean, into a
Yeah.
CRA role.
It
Love it.
depends on, yeah. It depends on what type of manager, because if you're a manager at the site level, let's say at an
Mhm.
institution, then they'll view that differently than if you're a manager on the CRO or the sponsor side.
Yeah. And they may be worried about your salary requirements, because stepping back into a CRA role, you may have to take, it might be a, yeah, it
That's
might be a
right.
slingshot,
Yeah.
might be a slingshot moment. But that's where a really well crafted cover letter or a really good recruiting agency comes into play, because you just tell them, look, I know I'm going to have to take a pay cut, or I know this, that, or the other, but this,
Or
I worked
he
all my
might
life.
not,
Maybe
because
not. Yeah.
nowadays with the larger CROs, their starting salaries have been getting pretty high.
They are doing much better than they were years ago for
Yeah.
sure. But,
So
but
you
don't
might,
underestimate a well-crafted cover letter explaining what you're trying to accomplish.
yeah. Um, so that, yeah, that's it. It's probably because it's on the site side, which a manager on the site side, the responsibilities will be different, and the pace is a lot of times different too.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's another thing that shocks people when they move from the site to the CRO, especially the bigger CRO side, because even the sponsor side moves slower than the CRO side.
That's
It
true.
is like
It's a
everything
big
needs to be
difference.
everything needs to be done yesterday. Everything is urgent. Everything is a priority. Everything is on fire every day.
I agree.
So it's
Yeah.
a huge different pace. So that's another thing that you want to make clear too, that you can handle that pace.
And that's why I tell aspiring CRAs to go get your first job with a CRO, because when you learn how to navigate that dynamic, you're going to be so competitive. Go
Yeah,
and stay. And I'm talking stay 2, 3 years minimum. But that
yeah,
dynamic is just going to, it's going to pave your way. If you can
Yeah.
handle it and go and like you say, move into a sponsor, it's a completely different environment.
Yeah, it's really nice when you can get a coordinator role and have that experience and then do a CTA role. Then that's like the best combination because you have that site side, but then like you said, you have that sponsor introduction. So you're not completely lost when it comes to the admin stuff that you're gonna have to do. Because a lot of people they get so confused with just time, even because everything is like built in units and stuff, and they don't even understand that language because they, people, most people haven't never had to do that before.
Right.
So even that sometimes it's like, you mean I have to capture like how much time I spent on this and that, and you know what I mean? And then, separate it all out, like how much time I spent on follow up, how much time I spent on management every day. You mean I have to do this every, yes, people.
And they want to know how much follow-up for that site because of that visit
Exactly.
too. So it's not even a big follow-up bucket. And if you're on multiple protocols, it gets even more
And
complicated,
more
you know?
complicated. Yep.
Mhm.
And you have to track all of that, all the protocols, all the sites,
Mhm.
all the visits. And this is an ongoing basis every week. So that, keep that in mind too. Alicia says it's a lot of work. My years in the hospital lab was crazy busy with patients bleeding out, etc. Work in multiple departments. So my role in the clinical research industry is not for the faint heart either. It's a different type of heart. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it regardless of what role you're in, the demand is going to be high in our industry in
I agree.
general.
Mhm.
Jakia says, I didn't know CTMs are now having to apply for CRA roles.
Yeah. We see it both ways. You know, when way back, you remember way back like 2009, 2010, and there were so many companies. I mean, the economy was so horrible. There were so many companies that went out of business. We had directors applying for CRA roles. And because they had their kids were in college, they were about to lose their houses. I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing some of that now. Companies are being acquired and gobbled up. The landscape has changed as far as the hiring is concerned. There are so many companies. All the recruiting forums are like, what's going on? It's so quiet out there. But we are seeing CTMs, and you look at a company like Boeing, or to where they've decided to shift all of their contractors out. Okay, well, if you were a CTM for Boeinger for I don't know how many years as a contractor, you may not have a job right now. You got to go find something else. And if you can't find something else, you may want to settle for a role you can do just to be able to make your mortgage payment. Now, with that being said, there are CTMs who make a tactical decision to move back into monitoring because they love it. It's what they want to do. They enjoy the site interaction. They really just want to get back to the basic monitoring duties because they miss it. Those are the CRAs I want to work with, not the ones that are settling. And I'm sorry, if you got to make your mortgage payment, really, my heart goes out to you. But I can't put you out there in a CRA role if I know you're settling. What happens when a CTM job gets offered to you? You're going to leave my client high and dry, major bond.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
no, and to that point, I will add that I'm really, and you are too, big on mindset and spirituality. So I'm a firm believer that regardless of whatever's going on in the economy, you can still get a job, and a
Mhm.
job that you want, and
Yep.
still have a successful career.
I
So,
agree.
yeah, so
Mhm.
I don't, people that are listening, don't take what she said because everybody, some people like to go left and start getting scared and say, "Oh my God, Angela says no jobs. What are we gonna do?" That's not what she said. But going back to also what we talked about, I think on the first or second part of the series, we talked about how important branding and marketing yourself is.
Mhm.
And
And
if you
goals,
if
even
you
before you start the branding and marketing.
exactly. And if you put in that work, even
Mhm.
if you do get laid off, you have a network, you've built up a network, you've marketed yourself so you can get a job within a week, within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks. And you can actually pick and choose and not be that desperate person
I
that's just
agree.
settling. So that full circle ties back into how important it is nowadays to not just be a job seeker, but you really have to create that your brand and market yourself so that you don't get in these situations.
I absolutely agree with you. And when you say network, I want to make sure I'm really clear to this audience. That does not mean that you send a LinkedIn invitation out to everyone and their brother. You've got to get into real conversations with real people, and you don't need that many advocates to
You
be able to
don't.
pave
You
your
really
way.
don't.
Yeah.
You really don't. One good person can really make the
Mhm.
difference. You don't have to have a lot, just that one good connect. I
Yeah.
think people underestimate that too. They think about quality versus quantity.
Mhm.
And quantity is going to outweigh, I mean, quality is going to outweigh quantity every
I
time.
absolutely agree. Yeah, yeah. Just a
Um,
real good network that you can
yeah,
trust, lean on, and then you tell them you're looking, and they love you, and they're going to put their feelers out for you, and boom, you got
yeah,
a job just like that.
yeah, absolutely. Valencia says, hello, yeah, I'm currently a CRA. Before transition, I have 4.5 years on site. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And Valencia, tell us, even with those, share with everybody, even with that 4.5 years on site, how was the transition? Did you still have some challenges? Was it easy? Let everybody know, because there's a
Mhm.
lot of study coordinators that they get 1 month and they're like, okay, I'm ready to be a CRA. You might even get, you can, I've seen people there coordinators for a little while, they get a job, or CTA for a little while, they get a job. But the question is, you got to ask yourself, do you want to become a C? Because once you're in the CRA role, like, you can't go back. Like, it is what it is. Now you're there, you're in it, and you know, you either sink or swim, right? So
Mhm.
ask yourself, do you want to jump in there, or do you want to take the time that you need to make sure you're prepared so you can have a successful career? Because I think people forget about that too. It's not just about getting a job, it's about creating,
I agree.
establishing,
Yeah.
building a successful career, right?
It's the difference between training for a sprint and training for a marathon. I mean, CRA gig would be a marathon for me, and you gotta, whatever, cliche you want to use, you got to plow the field before you can plant the seed, before you
Yeah.
can harvest the corn, whatever you've got to do. But I agree with you, Jasmine. Those foundations are incredible. They're so important.
So important. Jesse says, can you elaborate on the lasting portion of being a coordinator? I've been at my AMC for 3 months now. Our cancer disease group has been closed for close to a year now and probably won't be open to accruing new subjects until 6 to 8 months from now. It's hard to sit tight and be patient waiting for something to happen. Don't want to be seen as a job hopper, but it's also a bit frustrating when the site was not upfront about how slow compared to other disease groups this position would be. Um, but at the same, like, yes, you want to stay at a company for as long as you can, if you can. But if you're in a situation, Jesse, it sounds like maybe you aren't getting experience because the project's on hold. Is that
Yeah,
what you
because
got
there's
from
no
the end of
point. Because I would agree. I mean, Jesse, I always look at tenure, but I tell my CRAs this too, because we have them sign a contract. I expect them to stay for their initial term, unless they get into the project and it is not as it was advertised.
then you got a different story, right?
Now we have a different story.
Yeah.
So if they didn't tell you the whole story and it was a purposeful, now things change. I mean, that is what it is. But if they
Especially
didn't
in
tell
our
you,
industry.
yeah, but if they didn't tell you the whole story, or if it's no longer as it was advertised, I mean, you gotta look after. I don't
You
want
got
to
to.
sound, yeah, you gotta look after you and your career as well, and I can't imagine that there's gonna be a recruiter alive that wouldn't understand your
Yeah.
desire to go somewhere else because you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs. If you have a strong passion to go do something and you're being held back because you can't get the experience at your current job, I would tell you to go look for another job.
Yeah, I would too. I don't see anything wrong with that. And going back to what you always say, telling the story, you just make sure that you're telling that story and it makes sense on your resume, cover
Mhm.
letter, interviews, whatever you're
Yep.
doing.
And that it can be validated in the industry.
Yeah,
Anyone at this site and be able to tell, anybody who's in the industry would be able to put their feelers out and tell that what you're saying is true.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
unified, it's honest, it's transparent. I see nothing wrong with that at all.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I agree. Randall says, I would love to send you my CV and cover letter to critique. I'm not sure who he's referring to when he says send you. I'm pretty sure your schedule's tight. Mine's tight, Randall.
Yeah, and I would love, I get reached out to all the time for that. I would love to.
I do
I mean,
too.
Jasmine, sometimes I am so jealous of your coaching because I would love to do that, but that's not my business model. Now, if we're representing you, honey, you got my critique all day, every day. But you got to get to that representation point because at that point, it's baked into our
Right,
costs and that type of
right.
thing to help you with. And you don't need to write your cover letter. That we actually write your cover letter for you. So there is that too, you know. But unfortunately, you're please send me your CV and cover letter, and I will make sure you have a profile in our database, and we'll keep you posted if and when something opens up that fits. But I'm not going to be able to commit to you that I can give you a critique. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, me neither. I would love to too. Which I did do a live resume critique one time, so I might be open to that, Randall. So send it to me and then maybe we could do
Yeah,
a
that's a
live critique.
really good idea. There's a task force out of Africa that I've been invited to participate in, and it's through the IAOCR. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the IAOCR. It's international. I don't know. It's kind of like the ACRP over in Europe. And we're going to do a live resume critique, and we're going to compare it to a LinkedIn profile to where we can kind of talk about how you can better brand yourself without looking fraudulent, and how to really do that united front, what to add, what not to, where do you draw the line of too much versus enough, all of those types of things.
Mhm.
I think that'd be a great live session for you to do.
Yeah, that's cool. And it would be now that you brought up the task force, it would be cool. Maybe we could do that together and then we
Mhm,
can use Randall's and then even compare to the LinkedIn profile.
mhm. Could do.
That might be
Yeah.
an option. Yeah. So Randall, send it over and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think there's a lot of synergy to be able to help people understand why it's important to do LinkedIn and to do certain things within LinkedIn. Like, for example, did you know, and I've been meaning to tell you this too, but like LinkedIn's algorithms really strict. If you do a post this morning and then you do a post in an hour, the LinkedIn algorithm will not position that second post in front of
Oh
you.
yeah, yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
also picky about hashtags. If you
Yeah.
have more than 3 hashtags on your post, you'll actually go down in the ratings rather than go up. So working with someone who knows the algorithms for LinkedIn, it's kind of like being able to build a website and people being able to find you by doing Google searches. It's a similar approach to where you can optimize your LinkedIn to get found, and there's tricks to it,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. That's what I literally help people do because they forget that it's a search engine.
Yes,
And with every search engine, there's SEO. And if you can master that, you can get found.
I agree.
That's pretty much what all it boils down to.
Mhm.
Alicia says that's how it is in the hospital. Everything is stat. I can imagine. Um, Alaba, let me know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I had the CRA role as a CRC transition to CRA have been tough so far.
Mhm.
Mm. I'm assuming he's saying that he did that CRC to CRA transition and it's been tough.
I can
Um,
imagine. Mhm.
yeah, tell us more about that. Um, I'm so behind on comments. I didn't realize it. They're just rolling in. Imagine going from a CRO to a sponsor. That would I think I would feel like I made it because it's like it's so much slower. I
I can't
always
wait until we find that perfect contract for you because 'cause you're just gonna fall in love.
I'm always jealous of my friends who are like on the sponsor side, and I talk to them. It seems like they're doing nothing, and I'm over here like freaking out, like one fire after the next, and they're just chilling. Like all they do is come to the meetings and tell us what we're not doing, and then and then they don't do anything else except look at trackers and updates that we send and tell us how we're moving too slow and we need to schedule some more visits.
Well, but that CRO being managed by the sponsor, I guess what I was thinking was that, being a CRA working directly a sponsor, and most of our
Oh,
clients
yeah,
are.
that would be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, because now you're a CRA working directly for the sponsor. You've cut out the CRO middleman. You're taking your work direction directly from the clinical ops team at the sponsor, right? So while they still care about how much money you spend, you're not being held accountable to metrics on how long it takes to write a report and
Yep.
those types of things. They care about the quality of data. And the
Yep.
thing I love about it more than anything else is if you work with some of the large CROs and you get to a site and it's a mess and you say, "Hey, I need to spend an extra day," they're going to be like, "What are you talking about? No, you're not getting an extra day. It's not in the scope." You do that to a sponsor, they're like, "Oh my God, do I need to send someone out there and help you co-monitor to get caught?" I mean, they care about the data.
Yep.
Imagine that, right? And the project and the product and all of those things.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I've literally been in that situation where it's like,
Mhm.
but I have all this stuff to do. And they're like, but we only have one day, one day in the
Prioritize. Yeah.
budget.
You get to the reg binder next
They
time.
didn't
Yeah,
pay
right.
for 2 days. So no, you need to leave. It's like, okay. So yes, this is like real life. This has happened to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
Um, Tori says, oh, what is your perspective about this? Oh, I think that's not for us. Alicia says, wow, you have to do whatever is necessary to make ends meet. Scary times.
Mhm.
But don't get scared, Alicia. Don't get scared.
Get determined, make a goal, do a mental rehearsal or visualization every day or whatever you want to call it, and don't give up on the goal. Don't settle. Make sure you stay in control. That is probably my biggest message is when a CTM settles for a CRA job, do you know how much that's going to hurt their brand?
Yeah.
That's either they're either going to have to be honest about it on their resume and then explain it for the rest of their lives, or they're going to have to hide it on their resume and be fraudulent. It is going to hurt their brand to settle. Don't settle. Set your goals, stay in control, set your targets, visualize them, build your network, build your brand, make it happen.
Yep. Yep. It's worth it. It's worth
Mhm.
it. Um, and then I think this is in response to the question to Valerie
To
about how
Tori's,
did
yeah.
she make the transition, and she said she had to adjust her mindset and the culture of work. Yep, that's
Mhm.
that's good. Those are some good points. Adjusting your mindset and the culture. I see some other things. I'm trying to pick out which ones are for us. Guess I love being a CRA. So Leland is letting us know how her transition was. I love being a CRA. It's frowned upon in the industry if that is it frowned upon in the industry if that is all I want to do. If I
Mhm.
ever thought about going into management position, it would be a line manager role. I'm curious on another perspective about this. No, there's lots of CRAs that they literally just once they got in the CRA role, they retired as CRA roles as a CRA, right, Angela?
I agree, and I'm just looking to see if I got Leland in my my database. I do, but I don't have your contact information. Shoot me an invite. I will tell you this: you're the CRA I want to work with.
Mm,
You're the CRA I want to work with. You love it, and you know what? CRAs who love being a CRA are good blooming CRAs. Now if you ever decide you want to change, then change. But if you love it, then do it. You can still diversify. You can move into consulting, gain more work life balance, and
you
make more
can.
money, get
Mhm,
more therapeutic experience, get the
mhm.
diversity, and still love every minute of it. You're the CRA we want to work with, and you're the CRA our sponsors want to work with because you just go do your job. You're not having to be managed. No one has to see whether or not you really did what you said you were going to do because you really love it. It's a game changer. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's great points. But no, Leland, if you want to be a CRA until you die, that is perfectly definitely not for people love that.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
need CRAs, we need veterans to stay in the industry and help people that are coming in because there's always going to be new people coming in. There's always going to be people coming out, leaving for whatever reason,
Mhm.
promotion or they hate it. So yes, we need people like you, Leland.
Mhm.
Um, what else? Alicia says, I will say once I landed my in-house CRA role, I questioned my decisions, but I'm glad I stuck it out.
Talking about admin, buried
Yeah.
in admin and in-house CRA role.
Once
Wow.
you get past that steep side of the learning curve, then you just try to hang in there until you get at least, up at the top of it. Valencia says it's been helpful because as a CRC, you are the hands and ears of studies. Being
Mhm.
meticulous in site management helpful. As a CRC, you're navigating a lot. Plus, we're running multiple projects. It has been helpful because it
Mhm.
is blending. I had experience with regulatory submissions, lab pharmacy handling. Definitely helps with presentation of protocols. Yet I am gaining confidence with monitoring in the systems.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So y'all see, Valencia, she had a lot of experience going in, but she still, you know, it's a challenge.
Well, and how much more
Challenge.
confidence is Valencia gonna have her during her SIVs, and then being able to navigate the dynamics of that veteran CRC, been a a CRC for 20 years, and they don't want a CRA coming in and telling them what to do, right? So we're the investigator that's ego, and you got to go approach them. You've been there, you did it every day for however long, and it makes you a better CRA now to
Yeah.
navigate that landscape.
Yeah, it does. And it helps you stay just a little more sane and get
Mhm.
up past that learning curve a lot quicker and a lot easier too. It's not as much drama. Randall says, thousand thanks to you and Angela. Aw. And he also says he appreciates us very much.
Aw.
Thanks, Randall. Leland says, so what are your thoughts of these CRA Academy schools popping up?
I think some of them are fairly reputable. I think others are not. We at the IA, so I'm working with, I'm not a part of the IAOCR, but I am working with them just like I work with the ACRP whenever the opportunities arise. And we're trying to put together a list now. I've actually already started it based off of what I'm seeing on resumes of these organizations that offer certifications or accreditations or additional degrees or whatever, because some of them are pretty sleazy, quite honestly. And
Yeah.
being able to provide a list to the industry for those of you who are hungry for and are willing to pay and go to school, giving you a list of some that are a little more reputable is what we're trying to accomplish, because it's you go out and do a search, and I mean some of them are stupid. I mean I've seen sites that advertise a CRA certification for $1,099, and they've got the definition of a CRA wrong, and I'm like, oh my god, who signs up for this stuff? But they gotta be making a mint out of it.
But also one thing I'll add is that a lot of people they'll come to me and they say they're CRA certified, but they still can't get a job. And I think there's also this thing where people think that because a company, one of these companies just said, do this program and then you're a certified CRA, that's industry recognized. And that there's a huge difference between, like, maybe they are accredited. Like, there's organizations that will accredit people, right? Maybe they are accredited,
Oh,
but
there's a FBI list of fake accreditation companies too.
I was just about to say that maybe there somebody did accredit them, right? But
Yeah,
whoever that somebody is, but is
yeah,
it industry recognized?
I
And
agree.
right now, the only true CRA certification is through ACRP.
SOCRA has a professional one that's well renowned, but it's not specific to CRA. I
It's
agree.
not
You know.
specific to CRAs.
Mhm.
For its clinical research professionals in general. That's the SOCRA
Mhm.
one. But the
Yeah.
only CRA one right now is ACRP, and you have to have been a monitor. I think it's 3,500 hours or something like
I
that.
think you're right. It's like almost
Um,
the equivalent of 2 years.
yeah,
It's right at, 'cause full utilization for a CRA is like 2,080 hours.
yeah, and
So
unless you one caveat is that they'll give you some credit if you've taken, like, one of the, and I don't know how they vet if what program you did, but if you've taken some type of clinical research or CRA accredited program,
mhm.
they'll give you credit for, X amount of hours, but you still have to have been a monitor. So if you're saying that you're CRA certified, but you've never even done a monitoring visit, you can't be certified. That is
I
not
agree.
a true CRA certification. So that's another thing that I think confuses people, because there's a lot of companies out here saying become a certified CRA. And their program might be a good program. Maybe you're learning some great information, but that's not a true CRA certification.
Mhm. Don't expect
Um,
it to get you a job.
and that's another thing I think it's important to point out, that a lot of the programs, they aren't focusing on getting you a job. They're focusing on teaching you how to do the job, which in all honesty, once you get the job, like they're gonna give you training and experience, right?
Mhm.
And if you follow the path of like study coordinator CTA, then you really don't need those academies.
I agree.
Um,
I
but
absolutely agree. And I don't I mean, I think you're very sweet that you think that they're trying to teach you how to work. I think their goal is to make money.
well, some of them are, but there are
Yeah.
some good ones. Like Dan Sferra's academies is really good.
Mhm.
He has a CRA academy. So there are some really good ones out
Mhm.
there, and that's good that you guys are putting together a list. I would actually like to get in on that and contribute because I see so many people coming to me saying telling me they have these certifications with companies that I didn't even know existed.
I'll send you a share to the Google Doc I'm building.
Yeah, because and then I'll contribute and add mine because
Here's
it's
my
just
list of things to do today. This is how disorganized. So
that's
scary.
what my life looks like. I
Jasmine,
have paper
link to Google
everywhere.
Doc.
But no, this is a I'm glad she asked that question
Yeah.
because no, that is yeah, there's a lot, and she's right. There's more academies popping up as we speak.
Yeah, and they're
So
not all created equal, and there are some
they're
sleazy ones
not.
out there for
There
sure.
are. There
Mhm.
definitely are.
And I
So
saw prices ranging from $199 to like $1,099. And, and like I said, you look on the website and the websites are awful and the definitions are weird. And, I'm like, I hope these guys are doing their homework before they pull their wallets out because
I've
it's
seen some
frustrating.
up to 10,000, Angela.
Oh, wow.
$10,000. Yes. I actually had a young lady who came to me and she was crying because she had invested in one of these programs and had been 2 years and not a single interview.
Bless her heart.
Yeah.
See,
I
that's
feel
just
so
like
bad
con
for
artistry at its best, but that's what happens whenever you're desperate instead of in controlled. And I say this to people all the time, you like the med tech we were talking about, and she applied to all these positions. And then one of my team members said, "You do understand you're seriously underqualified, and this is hurting your brand." Right? Because now we question your judgment. I mean, we try to educate where we can. And dang if she didn't go and apply to two or three more. Like desperate people make desperate decisions,
Yes.
but the story now is not how you have this strong urging desire to become a CRA. It's just like you're going to do anything to get in the role.
Yes.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
It is. Nobody want just like dating. You don't want the desperate person. You don't. Nobody wants the desperate person
You
for
run
anything,
away. Run away. Run
right?
away.
Lachelle says the sponsor is a different beast, different stakeholders, different objectives, different timelines. Yeah, it is different, but it is still slower, Lachelle. When
Yeah.
I was on a FSP model and I was sponsor aligned, I just felt like it was a breeze after I because coming from the other side where I wasn't sponsor line, because I was on their metrics, right? So no more of that. You need 8 to 10 days on site. It was just like you do a visit when you need a visit, right?
That's right.
And I was using their systems, and everything was just like a whole different world.
Hmm.
A whole different world. And not to say, not to, I'm playing and laughing and saying they don't do anything. I know they do some things. Um, but it's definitely a different pace.
But you got to think about what's motivating individuals at the sponsor side versus what's motivating people at the CRO side. The business model is different. I mean, the CRO, they're making their money off providing the services. So it behooves them to push the CRAs out as much as you can because, like you said, they're charging per unit. So the
Yep.
more SIVs you do on a salary, the more money they make.
Yep.
Right now, on the sponsor side, to your point, and this is why a lot of sponsors that don't use CROs are happy to do contractors because then they only use you when they need you. Now,
Yep.
that sounds scary, but it isn't because basically what that means is if you only have enough work to be on the road once out of the month, as far as those types of visits, and then the rest of the time it's site management or TMF reconciliation or whatever it is that you're doing, you're still working your hours, but you're only on the road when you need to be on the road and
Yep.
you're accomplishing the goal of the company
Yep.
rather than fighting to get the metrics. It's a whole
Yep.
different
A
mindset.
whole different mindset. And you're actually effectively managing the site because you're not
Mhm.
concerned with the next
Right.
visit and the next report and the next.
Yep.
So Yeah, I agree. Someone says I think this is Valerie. I'm a CEO, a CRA at the sponsor. I
Mhm.
think so. I can't tell. It also said it's a lot of building relationships with the site staff and the PI. Yep. And she said it's my job to monitor and be a level of concierge service to the site. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And you can do that better on the sponsor side because on the CRO side, you really don't have the you don't have the time to really be as effective as you want to, or else you're gonna get behind and you're gonna drown and you're not gonna be able to keep up. You're just the numbers alone, you just get like CROs, like most of our revenue is visits. That's literally what's paying most of the people's salaries. So it's a different game.
It is.
Um Alicia says, "Oh, you have a great point. You won't settle. Never settle, Alicia. Never
Never.
settle." And Leland says, "Till I die." Then she says, "Yes, till you die." I mean, hey, I know plenty of CRAs that once they got in the CRA role, that's what they did, and they did it for 20. I think the longest I've from the CRAs that I met, she did for 25 years. Exactly. They're getting
We work with CRAs for up to 10 now, like, consistently. Maybe at different
mm,
sponsors, because the goal would be is to place them at a sponsor, and then once those projects
right.
end, pull them off and put them with a different sponsor, but we've had CRAs placed under us for, like, 10 years. We love it. I mean, if that's what you love to do, I mean, do it. Do it great.
Yeah.
Love every
Leland
minute
and
of it.
so Leland, Angela said, contact her.
Yeah, shoot me a LinkedIn invite for sure.
Yeah,
And I know we're recruiters, but we don't stalk people. I tell you that. And we never share your resume without your written authorization. We don't do that either. But it's good to have it because we got so much coming up and going on. And who knows, maybe you want to learn something new in rare and orphan disease or, something else that we offer that's like, wow, I'd like to be able to get experience in that therapeutic.
yeah, and that's the good thing about contract work,
Mhm.
especially with a company like yours, is you can stay for a long time and be on multiple projects. I think when people hear contract, they get scared because they
They
think,
do.
oh, it's temporary. But in all honesty, y'all, if even if you're a full-time employee, they can let you go whenever. So there's
There you go.
really
Yeah.
no bit like that. You shouldn't be concerned about that at all.
Mhm.
Someone else says that most of these CRA training companies are the new brand new money grab. Yeah,
Mhm.
unfortunately. ACRP needs to have a list of reputable academies. Well, Angela's creating one, so
We are in the process of putting it together, and we'll probably be asking for feedback on what's reputable
oh
because
yeah,
people will be
absolutely.
but yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be a list of certifications, accreditations, which are different, and then educational institutions that offer something, Georgetown,
Yes.
for
Yes,
those types of companies.
absolutely. If we all join together, like people like me, people like you, the ACRP people, SOCRA, even people like Dan that has the CRA because he also has a study coordinator academy. I think he does something with PIs too. But if we all came together,
Mhm.
then that's really what's because people need this information and it's not collected anywhere.
I agree.
Tori says, does this feed into fake CRAs?
We have gotten a little off off of topic. I mean, it does in a way because it shows the challenge.
Tori's like, let's
I'm
get
gonna
back
try to
on
bridge this back, Tori. Thank you for keeping us honest. It,
topic.
what it does is it shows the desperation and it shows the drive of someone and quite honestly the things that they'll go to try to get into that CRA gig and if you do it and you're not qualified to do it, I mean, it's not even just that it's going to hurt you and your brand. Think of the patients and the cost that the pharmaceutical companies have to go through to remonitor your sites when they realize you didn't know what you were doing, and
Yep,
they got to send somebody else out there to remonitor it. And then you got the soft costs of the sites that are upset, the peer CRAs that have to pick up the workload of the individual that was fraudulent, the
yep, I've done
reputation,
that.
yep, the reputation of the CRO. I mean, it's a combination of things, isn't it? So.
Yep, it is. Leland says she's doing it right now, Angela. Um,
Oh, having to clean up after a fake? Hmm.
no, she's sending you.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Nakia says, just like some of these so-called people paying thousands and promising them a CRA role, I had a few young ladies tell me they paid thousands and was never able to get a CRA role. But that goes back to the organizations, this whole fake
Mhm.
industry, into where they literally promise. I never promise anybody anything, because at the end of the day, it requires you and your effort.
Mhm.
So if somebody's promising you something, then that's the first sign that that's not reputable. But going back to the fake industry, they promise these things because they do have this system in place,
They have a network.
and sometimes it works, right? There's
Yeah,
people that slide in and they make it. Everybody's not caught, and some people literally fake it till they make it.
they do. They absolutely
Um,
do. We take references from managers, or managers are put down as references sometimes, and you can tell that they faked their way into the industry because we have the data that shows they said they were a CRA for a company that was not in existence when they said they were a CRA for them. So you know they faked their way in. They moved all the way through the ranks and now they're in management. It happens.
all the time, unfortunately. And Alicia says, my, why would anyone want to commit fraud in the healthcare industry? Patients' lives are.
I couldn't agree more, which is the reason why we stand on the rooftop and shout about the problem. And there are some checklists on our website. You go to craresources.com. There's a blog page. And if there's actually a whole fraudulent category, you click on that, it's going to pull up everything. And some of it's targeted towards hiring managers, and there's others that's targeted towards CRAs. But there's a lot of things that CRAs can do that can accidentally make them look dishonest.
And
And
that's what I want to make sure we got into. How
yeah,
do the legit, reputable people avoid looking fake?
I think a lot of times folks think that, a little shift here or a little shift there. We live in a big technology industry to where it's very hard to undo what has already been cached and crawled and done out there. But now there are ways to erase your digital footprint. I'm going to be upfront and honest that you can erase and start over on a digital footprint. And it's funny because one of my operations manager, Carrie's son, said that he had erased his digital footprint. He was in the military, and I went out and found him just like that. I'm like, yeah, right.
It didn't work.
Oh, it doesn't
You
work
thought
like
you
you think it
did.
does. It is harder than you think it is. Um,
But if you
but
find that, if you pay them the right price and the right organization, I'm sure they could probably erase it, right?
yeah, they can. I mean, there's definitely ways to do it. And I have a couple of notes that can just kind of help. But I think the biggest is this, whenever we're looking at a resume, we're looking to make sure everything matches across the history. And it can be a little thing that you do that can make you look fraudulent. First of all, you left a position under less than desirable circumstances. You can fill in the gap with whatever that is. Feel free to leave it off your resume if you want to leave it off your resume. We will never, ever not talk to someone just because there's a gap on the resume. Never. We'll never do that. But if you take the dates of the before and after and you stretch those dates to hide that less than desirable exit, that is fraudulence, you guys. There is no way to cookie cutter it. I'm sorry, there's no way to candy coat it. It's fraudulence. And it's if you get caught and if the company you're interviewing with has an older LinkedIn profile, or if your LinkedIn profile doesn't match, or an older resume and it shows this company, you are going to get blacklisted from the company. It is what it is. And I actually tell people, people worry about gaps. I worry about unexplained gaps. We talked a little bit about this last week, Jasmine. Everybody's going to have a gap. If you're in this industry, you're going to have a gap at some point because the industry is what it is. You think about all the people that got laid off at PPD last month. Every one of them they weren't expecting it. They're going to have a gap on their resume. It's going to take them a minute to find a job, right? It might not be a big gap, might be, but it's still a gap. What I
Mhm.
see is whenever people always gracefully in one position, December
And
31st, start the next position January 1st. Those to me, if you have a lot of those on your resume, especially with companies that are no longer, they're deceased, so there's no way to do an employment verification, it could make you look suspicious. So if you've got a gap, put it out there front and center. And if you've got a recruiter that is not on top of this industry enough to understand that a 3-week or even a 2 or 3 month gap it's not a problem, It's what happens. And if you've got a recruiter who doesn't understand that, you need to change recruiters.
Mm, mm. What are some other like little subtle ways that people are looking fraudulent on LinkedIn and they don't even know it?
Well, not being clear on LinkedIn. First name, last initial. I will tell you right now, if you are first name and a last initial and you send me a LinkedIn invitation, I will not accept it.
Mm,
I will also not allow you in our group.
mm.
And if you have low number of connections, or for us, I mean, we have so many CRAs in our database. I'm always shocked whenever a new, like Leland, she's in our database. I'm always shocked whenever someone just comes up out of the blue, right? And it's like, bam, they got 500 connections. We've never seen them before. I mean, you guys, I've got people that's all they do is go out and look for CRA people on LinkedIn, you know? So, I mean, we've seen that too. I've accepted invitations on the flip side from people who said they were CRAs. And then in 2 months, they're showing they were a recruiter. They were just trying to connect with me so that they could see what we're up to and if they could like snake some of our work or have access to our network or, that type of thing. But the flip side happens, where somebody was, a financial advisor or they were whatever, and then they changed their title and they've already got 500 connections and now they're a CRA and they've got the perfect profile. So, and in those cases, what I would say is again, the digital footprint. Make sure that you've got a unified digital footprint. And after we talked about that, the last time I had a gal that reached out to me and said, I'm really concerned. I'm a CRC and I don't think I have a digital footprint. And I found her just like that. It's a little bit easier than you think. If you've really been in the industry for any period of time, you have a digital footprint in the industry. It's there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some pictures that I found when I searched my name that I wish was not there. But I need to let that go.
Let me see.
But yes, your digital,
Oh,
you're out
sorry.
there. With today's technology, they have stuff from, apparently I have some high school stuff that I found because I used to play softball and basketball and I was in the newspaper. I found that picture, which I wish was not available, but hey, I'm
Well,
not
we
gonna
can.
pay to erase it, so it's just there.
Well, and but you know what? That actually could be a godsend for you because we catch that often as well. Someone will say they've been in the industry because the gate to a senior CRA position is at least 3 to 5 years experience as a fully dedicated CRA, having gained that experience working directly for a sponsor or CRO.
Mhm.
So we'll see individuals that again they bam, they're just all of a sudden they're out there on LinkedIn and they've got that obligatory 3 to 5 years experience. And then you go do a digital footprint and you see where they just graduated from high school or they just graduated from college or they just graduated. So that could actually be in your favor because it helps confirm the timeline of when you exited school and you started whatever. And if you've been cited in research programs that you've attended, that's your digital footprint. You gotten cited or you were part of clinicaltrials.gov as a coordinator, there's your digital footprint. I mean, it all starts layering in
Yeah.
whenever you've actually been. And like I said, the perfect profile of I worked at MD Anderson as a coordinator and then I went to PPD. Doesn't matter that I lived in New Jersey all my life, y'all, but I worked for 3 years at MD Anderson and I got my foundations as a coordinator. And then I went to PPD and I've been working for the last 3 years as a CRA.
You
Hiring
were remote,
contractor.
Angela. You were
Right.
remote.
Exactly. But again, I mean, the digital footprint is there. We can see the employment listing of MD Anderson, a lot of the U.S. oncology sites, the Mayo clinics. I mean, Sarah, you could tell these people worked at these organizations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And even I know I had never worked for MDA, for example, but being a CRA there, I'm still going to be in their system because you have to get vetted to
The
even
vetting.
come, yeah, to even come there. So places like that, you can, I don't know, can you find CRAs that use
I
them?
I don't know if they can. I don't know if they can give out the vetting methodologies or not, because obviously we have to help because we have several clients that do have studies going on at MD Anderson as an example, and of course we help with the vetting process, the criminal background, and all that. I've never found that on a digital footprint though, so they
Mm,
might have to have that more of a confidential thing because of what it takes to get vetted. You start thinking
okay.
about the confidential information, criminal history, drug tests, any of that kind
Mm.
of stuff.
Okay.
So
I was wondering if you would be able to find CRAs that used to, have that site. Because even now, like, if I went back to MDA, immediately they'll find you in their
they
system.
will. Yeah, but it
Um,
must not be for public consumption because I've never seen the vetting results online,
oh,
but
okay.
I would say internally like, would make
Well,
sense.
that might be a thing that
Mhm,
might evolve into something as another way to confirm that you actually
mhm,
were a monitor or whatever. Of course, not all like the smaller sites, they don't have all that fancy stuff, but at least at the larger institutions.
mhm.
Someone says, speaking of therapeutic areas, how do you transition from one therapeutic area to another? Um, Ask your manager for experience on
If you're
uh
with a CRO, that's what you do is
yeah,
ask.
you
Mm,
ask, tell them what, and I always, as soon as I come into a company and I get my line manager, I immediately let them know my goals.
mhm.
So even when I became a CRA, I immediately on day one was like, I want to be an oncology CRA. I think I actually said it during the interview. Now that I think about it, like I constantly said it to everybody to the point where they were like, okay, she's gonna do the regular monitoring training, but they also put me in the oncology monitoring training program too because they knew I wanted to do it, and they knew because I told them.
You have to
So
tell them.
you have
Yeah.
to tell them. So the first step would be to let your manager, line manager, trial manager, whoever know that you're trying to get experience in. What did she say?
Like oncology to non-oncology
Oh,
or
she said she wanted to go to Nana. Well, I thought you said the reverse. Once you get in oncology, it's hard to get out.
but you
It's
know what?
like,
If you move
oh.
into contracting, we do have some sponsors that they don't require experience in the particular therapeutic. Oncology is a different beast. It is very rare to find a company that runs oncology studies that will not expect you to have oncology experience. But whenever you're starting to take a look at other things, there are a lot of the other therapeutics that companies are, especially sponsors. If you're going to go work for sponsors, most of the sponsors we work with, they just need you to be a good CRA.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
teach you the protocol and you can learn the cardiovascular. I mean, now the high acuity, like the cabbage studies and, things like that, obviously you need to have some foundations, but, a lot of the derm studies and a lot of even like your basic nephrologies and a lot of those, you can learn on the job with those
Yeah.
without it being a huge problem if you have real good, strong foundations as a CRA.
Yeah, and if she's been an oncology CRA,
Hmm.
she can figure that's like
Yep.
I say oncology and neurology is like the top. I ain't gonna say worse, but let's just say complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can do those, you can definitely do other
Hmm.
areas.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then like you said, either on the get, I don't know if you work for a CRO or not, but on the CRO side or contract work, that gives you a little bit more leverage to pick and choose.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to look at the time. It's 8:30. Okay. We're gonna wrap things up. Let me get through the rest of these questions. Someone says, what do you recommend for company mergers? I just combined my time with PRA and Icon as one, as recruiters were getting confused.
I think that works if the recruiter is in the industry and they understand the PRA icon merge. But
Yeah.
whenever you're dealing with a soup to nuts that may not be very industry savvy, you're probably going to need to write it on your resume. You can still combine it, but just stay, start it out as icon. I mean, don't assume your recruiter understands the industry. You might want to put it on your resume, and then whenever it's time to get submitted to the client, they can take it off or they can leave it on. It's not going to hurt anything for it to stay on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think on my CV, I think I have it. So I'll have the company name, like the current name, but then in parentheses, I'll put formerly, you know,
That's a smart way to do it.
Cohance or
It
whoever it
really
was.
is. And here's another thing to do as well, is if you work for a CRO, but you're, like, dedicated to a sponsor, like in an FSP model or what have you, I have seen it to where they'll put on their resume they work for CRO whatever, and then on their LinkedIn, they've got, "I work for the sponsor." And so, again, if we always ask, "Hey, we know this is a CRO, who was the sponsors?" Because we wanna make sure that there's an alignment there,
Yeah.
But if it's a recruiting company that really isn't that savvy, or if it's some little HR person that doesn't have a lot of experience in the industry, even if they're working for a sponsor or a CRO, they may not connect those dots.
Yeah,
So
they might
you
not.
exactly. So I would say something like, I work for PPD and I'm assigned to, or fully dedicated to. And so
Yeah.
that way you've got them both in both places and there can be no confusion. And even if they have old copies of your resume and now they compare it and one says Amgen and one says whatever it is, then they can still say, oh,
Oh,
hi,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Makes
Mhm.
sense. Which goes back to what you said about telling a complete story.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Don't be vague. Put your profile picture out there. Put your details. Don't just say IQV and let it be it. Right. Allow people to work with you for God's sakes. Where,
yes.
what are you telling me? You've been a CRA for 10 years and you can't find a job, and then I go to send you an invite so I can help you and I can't connect with you. That would be why you can't find a job. Sorry.
That's another thing I always say. Being in the invisible job seeker is sometimes worse than being like, the half-ass profile seeker, because the invisible job, if you don't have a digital footprint, that in and of itself is suspicious.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Yeah. And use your full name, your real name. Don't make stuff up, right?
Yes,
Use your
yes,
full name, your real name.
yes,
Um,
please. This person says, what about a gap because you're caring for a sick parent?
I love that. I think it's admirable that you would do that. I've taken time off to care for my mom, not extended times, but thank goodness I could take my laptop with me and work where she was, and and all of that. You just explain it. The problem isn't the gaps. The problem is unexplained gaps. Because if it's unexplained, you're letting me use my imagination. It's never going to work in your
Never good.
favor. It's not. It's just not going to work in your favor. So,
Mm-mm.
so just explain it. Took
Just
this
explain
sabbatical
it.
off to raise my kids, or took this sabbatical off to care for my aging mother who had cancer, and now I'm ready to go. So,
Yeah, I think people get scared that if they tell the truth, then
mhm,
they're gonna not be picked or be disqualified. But the truth is gonna be your best friend,
mhm.
especially since we have all this whole, fraudulent industry going on.
Agree.
Because
Yeah.
you can, like, all of us that are CRAs, like, we didn't have monitoring experience till we got it. So
Mhm.
we all did it. We got in, we just told the truth, whatever your experience looks like. And you can do it too. So don't think that you have to make stuff up, or, let's what did you say? Stretch or
Stretch the
exaggerate.
dates. Mhm. Yeah,
You don't
stretch.
have to do that. You
You
can get
don't.
you really
I tell you, it really is connection, it's network. You
it
tell
is.
me what's going on with you, and if I believe that your competency is where it needs to be, I will go to battle for you.
Yes.
But if I think you're lying to me, it's gonna be a graceful exit of a phone call, and that's gonna be the end of it. Because why would I put my brand on the line for someone that I don't believe is telling me the truth? You got to tell us the truth. Let us help you, right?
Yeah.
We have to go to market together, which means we both got to be very transparent. And that goes both ways. The recruiters need to be honest with you as well.
Yeah.
And we have seen that to where recruiters like, no travel. There's no travel. We're not gonna take no
And then you get in there and it's like 95%. And you're like, what?
There's no metrics. This CRO doesn't do metrics.
Right.
They're different. They're okay. So,
You have
yeah,
those, yeah, you do have those recruiters that are like that.
yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, they're also probably under scrutiny to hit certain numbers and certain metrics, right?
They are, and a lot of the individuals that are doing that, and that's why I hold my team accountable to attrition. I clearly we care about placements; it's how we make our money. But I want the people that we place to stick.
Yeah.
So I hold my guys accountable to a relationship metric, which means that unless we've already ruled you out of our database, we're going to respond to you within a
Yeah.
certain time period. But then the other aspect of it is when they get a placement, that person stays for a certain time period, so it doesn't negatively impact our attrition. And that means that my guys are not just looking at making the placement, but looking at the fit. A
Yeah.
lot of recruiting companies, though, they hold these these recruiters accountable for X number of submits or Y number of placements. And if they don't meet those numbers, they get fired. So these recruiters don't care if you're good or not.
Yeah.
They're just going to fling your resume over to the clients and then hope it sticks. But when you don't, they're like, that's not, I'm not held accountable to that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Unfortunately.
mhm.
So you guys have to be careful with recruiters too.
You do.
Someone says this is the person that said she wanted to switch. She said she advised that she wanted to do something other than oncology, but was placed in oncology. Um, I'm not sure what company you work for or, which side it's on, and how long you've been there, but maybe it's not a good fit if you really want to be in another TA. You told them, nobody listened. Maybe it's not a good fit.
And I would tell them, I mean, I don't like threatening people, but I would absolutely tell the people, your line managers, that I am not happy. I did
Yeah.
not want this TA. I am
Yeah.
not going to stay in this TA. Now, I love this company and I'd like to stay in I will continue to work in oncology. So I don't want to threaten, but if something doesn't change, because I was transparent and I was told that I wouldn't be put in oncology and now I'm
Yeah.
in it. So
Yeah.
if you can't help make a change, I'm going to have to make a change.
Yeah.
Give them a chance to fix it, but be transparent about it without being
Yeah.
too threatening.
Yeah, yeah. I agree 100% because everything is in presentation and delivery and tone. You can
Mm,
say something nasty, but if you say it real nice and
mhm.
sweet, it gives a different feeling for when it hits the person.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would say that too. And then Shantae says, I'm told ophthalmology is complicated. Have you heard that? I haven't heard that.
We have some clients that do ophthalmology. I don't know that the protocols are always that complicated. Now we have worked on some glaucoma stent projects and some of those can get a little, the complication of ophthalmology is the terminology.
Mm,
Because you have all of these testing systems and the language and, and
okay.
all of that. So if you don't have any previous ophthalmology experience, it takes a minute to understand what the heck everyone's talking about. And it becomes very cliquish. Most of our oncology ophthalmology clients are like our oncology clients to where they want you to have previous experience. Now,
Mm,
that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be experience monitoring. They'll take ophthalmology techs and move them into the role or, do different things like that. But it is hard. It's hard to break into that one because, and I do believe it's really more of the ophthalmology terminology than it is necessarily for complicated protocols. Because, I mean, contact lenses and eye drops and some of those are really just not complicated protocols, but the terminology and the follow on test and the endpoints and all of that can get a little
mm.
confusing if you're not comfortable or knowledgeable in the area.
Okay, that makes sense now. And just so people know, when we say oncology and neurology is complicated, it's not just because of the indication and the disease, it's literally because of the protocols and how they're structured.
Mhm.
Sometimes they have multiple arms depending on the phase. If it's phase 1, it might be a dose escalation, might be some expansion if it's phase 1, 2A.
Mhm.
So and then you might have 5, 6, 7, 8 arms. It might be some combination treatments. That's what we mean when we say complicated. The protocols themselves are complicated. The design of the study is complicated.
Mhm. Agreed. Yeah, and then you start looking at whenever you're doing the monitoring on those kind of projects, all of the what you have to check that has had to be done, all of the
Yeah,
sampling and the testings and, all of that that has to be done too. That becomes complicated in and of itself as well.
yeah, it does. Because each TA I don't know about every single one. But neurology and oncology for sure, they have their own little assessments and like questionnaires, the quality of life questionnaires. In oncology, you have RECIST, for example, to assess, the progress of the tumors, the solid tumors. So there's different, and then in neurology, you have the raters because of all the different scales. So there's like it's just so many moving pieces.
Mhm.
The imaging, both of those TAs, they have a ton of imaging most of the time. So you have to keep up with all that stuff. It's just a lot of moving. Depending on the drug, it might be IV. A lot of times it's IV.
Mhm.
So you have to, like, you're not counting pills. So when you're monitoring, you have to make sure that they administered it correctly per
Do the
protocol.
calculations per the weight, per the this, and
Right, making sure that the time that they administer, because most of the time that's written into the protocol. It has to be within a certain window. So that's when things get
Mhm.
complicated, especially if you have a combo. Both of them are IV, making sure that they, administered it at the correct time. Sometimes you have to wait in between.
Mhm.
Um, it's just a lot of those little moving pieces
And
that make
that's the reason why having a really solid foundation as a coordinator is key, because
yeah,
you understand all those moving parts at the site level. So when you go to monitor it, you already kind of know what to look for, and what to ask for, and all of that makes a huge difference. It
yeah.
definitely helps the transition.
It definitely does. And we're just talking about just the protocol and the monitoring. You
Mhm.
still have trial TMF stuff that you got to do, ISF TMF reconciliation. You still have the administrative back end stuff that you have to do. You still have to manage your sites in between. Like it's never ending. So this is why we say you definitely don't want to rush it.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about, let me go through a couple of things real quick, just so that we
Okay.
make sure we get it all covered.
Okay.
Okay? But most of it we've covered in some form or fashion. The one thing I will tell all of you guys out there is, do not worry about the length of your resume. If you haven't been in the industry for more than 3 or 4 years, don't try to represent that you've got more. Now, if you've done volunteer work or that type of thing, that's fine. But
Hmm.
don't put it on a real pretty glossy format that's a single page, just to try to trick people into think that there's something there that's not. Just be honest about it. And again, let your passion and your accomplishments, you can get some I don't I hired a resume writer years ago, and it was a disaster. So I'm not going to say that don't do it. I'm just saying, if you do it, make sure that you're not just getting someone that'll put it in a pretty format. They need to be able to tease out from you what you accomplished at each of the jobs, what,
Yeah.
your tasks, and what the company benefited from having you on board for, and what you benefited and what you learned, so that it can really be rich in keywords and can tell your story. And for those of you that haven't been in the industry long enough, that's going to be your biggest challenge. But if
Yeah.
you start acting like you've done things that you haven't, you embellish a little bit. Some people see embellishment as fraudulence, and it can be a big deal breaker for you. And we're not just talking about getting you blacklisted from a company for 6 months. We're talking about forever, and that could be a really big problem. So,
Yeah, yeah. On not to mention once you get in the role, they're gonna
mhm.
be asking you to do the stuff that you said you could do.
That's
They're not
true.
gonna train you because you said you could do it, and
Yep.
then what? When all you had to do was a lot of times it's not a big deal if you haven't done something, that one thing or whatever it is that they're asking you. Just be honest. I don't have experience with that, but I have experience with this, and I'm ready to learn. I'm open to learn. I'm a fast, whatever. But
And
once
I
you
think I
come
can learn it because, and then you talk about something else that you learned
exactly,
that's similar, that you can transpose that experience over to.
exactly.
Mhm.
And then they'll know, so when you get in the role, they'll know, okay, I need to train this person on how to do whatever versus here you go, you need to do it, and then you're completely lost and panicking.
Yep.
It doesn't do you any service in the like you might get the job, but in the long term, wrong run, it doesn't do you any type of service justice to do that. It doesn't help the company. It doesn't help the industry. It's literally just hurting everybody as a whole.
And it could hurt your brand permanently.
It
So,
really can. It
it
really
be be
can.
careful. Yeah. So,
And that brings the conversation full circle to the whole point of how there's one, like, it hurts the industry on one end because it's like, it's just bad to have all these fake people running in and like messing up studies. And like you said, we got to play cleanup and stuff. But it's really hurting the genuine new applicants who would make really great CRAs, who would be great candidates. But now you got people paranoid looking, and are they? Are you fake? You get to the interview, you make one wrong move, you have one blank moment, and you're like, is this person fake? But they're really just trying to gather their thoughts. So
I agree.
it's messing everybody up.
It does. It hurts you. I had it ended up being a really sweet interview, and my recruiter had taken the recruiting call, and then she asked me if I would do the AM call because she's just learning the AM part of it. And the AM, for those of you, I'm sorry, the account management call, which is where the person has passed the recruitment stage, and now we're going to start talking to them about open positions. Well, I require video, and she couldn't get her video to work, and I was like, my God, I've just wasted an hour off my calendar. I've got so much stuff to do. This gal is not going to let me see her face, you know? And she was having technical difficulties. But do you know how many people fake technical difficulties? And so I just told her, I was like, you're going to have to figure it out. I will reschedule once. But you're going to have to figure, if you can't use Teams, I cannot put you in front of a client for an interview.
And back in the day, you probably would have just been like, it's okay, and moved on,
And
right?
that's how a lot of the fraudulent interviews were skating through, is because of that exact reason, right? And so, and she ended up buying a new laptop because she couldn't figure out how to fix it. And we've submitted her. She's interviewing right now with some of our clients. But that is a way that you can look fraudulent. If it is supposed to be a video interview, make sure you know how to use your video.
And if
You know?
something's wrong with your camera, you don't have to get a whole new computer. You can just get one of those.
Like a little
I mean,
webcam.
if it's just the camera, I don't know if it was her computer, but you could just get the little camera, that you put
I think it
at
was
the
her
top.
browser. I think she was using Edge. I think if she'd switched to Chrome, it would have worked just fine. But yeah, I agree. I
Well,
mean,
if it is your camera, you can get the little Logitech ones. You just stick it at the top of
that's
your
what I use. Webcam.
screen.
Yep.
Yep, and you can
Yep.
get them for reasonable prices too.
They're like 20
$100,
something dollars. I've got
$20.
mine is like $29.
Oh wow! I thought they started like 100. So yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
And
Um,
this was $29 and it's pink. You didn't even have to get the black one,
See, so
So I
you
mean,
can
and
get
it,
some things for reasonable
yeah,
prices. And on Amazon too, you can get them quick. You can get them next day.
I agree.
But it's
Yeah.
making everybody paranoid, and it's hurting the legitimate people
Mhm.
that we need in the industry.
I agree. And
And
when you're interviewing, look. Don't be looking off. And I know sometimes people look off to the side because they're thinking. You
I
know what
think
I imagine? A whiteboard with all the answers.
it's,
You knew I was going to say that, didn't you,
it's,
Jasmine?
it's gonna boil down to this. You can't even look to the side anymore.
No.
This is what this whole fraudulent industry has done to us. You can't even think. I was on an interview one time and I went completely blank with Alcoa. And I couldn't even focus on remembering it because they asked me what the acronym was for. I couldn't even focus on remembering what Alcoa was because I was so stuck on the fact they're gonna think I'm fake. And, and I was like, I just couldn't even figure it out because I'm like so like, oh God, they're gonna
And then
think
you're
I'm
like,
fake. You gotta
yeah,
hurry up and but stuff like that, because it's not like we sit around and think about Alcoa A attribute. Like we don't think about it, we just do it, right? It's just
right.
incorporated into GCP practices. Um, so I immediately was like, I know they think I'm fake. I just threw my hands up. Well, I guess they think I'm
But
fake.
it's important. You want to look engaged. I mean, the couple of times that I've looked up to see like if Leland was in our database or whatever, you can tell I'm off to the side doing something. And that's what you don't want to happen.
Yeah.
And if you're taking notes, y'all, I'm gonna write this down. You tell them you're writing it down because they're going to wonder what you're doing.
Yeah. They
And
are.
so I mean, and it could cause, I mean, like I said, I mean, I feel like I'm jaded, right? And not that I want to find out that you're fraudulent, but come on, you guys, we've been burnt so many times. I mean, we're always going to double check, and those are things that you can do that can make you look real suspicious. The other thing too that I think people do that they don't realize is they'll take a really nice CV, beautifully put together CV, and they're like, "Oh, I love that format." They copy that format and they put their own stuff in it. That is so dangerous. It is like taking an old report and then making the copy paste errors. The information's outdated. You just use their objective or their professional summary, and there's things in there. And because if we can, and I have this memory, there was a gal that requested to join our group, and then the name of the company was not familiar with me ish. And I thought, I just looked this company up, and I went into the database and I did a search on the company, and I found 3 profiles that have just requested to connect with us in the last week that all use this company. We had never heard of the company before. And so it just kind of popped in my head. So if you're using somebody else's resume and that person just submitted their resume to the recruiting agency and now you submitted the resume to the recruiting agency, if somebody feels familiar with it, they might start comparing and think, that's Jasmine's resume. I wonder if they're colluding. Again, it's I hate it. The taint is there, but be careful because your end dates and start dates by mistake. You're copying someone else's format. You might forget to change it. You might forget to change the title. You might forget that you change the number of years experience. It's the same thing as copying an old report, an IMV. It's so dangerous to do that, isn't it, Jasmine?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I've reviewed some reports where it was copy and paste, and it's like the other site's PI's name is in the report, or the other site name, or just those little
Here
errors.
are the follow-ups from last time.
It's like, and I
Mhm.
get it. I get it, especially on the CRO side. We talked about the pace, but come on, people.
Devil's in the details. That's the
Yeah,
role of the CRA.
it
And
is. It really is. You
yeah,
have attention to detail is like a number one skill that you need to have because it's moving so fast. You have so much to do.
yep,
And quality matters throughout it all. So
absolutely. Mhm.
yeah, that's a good point. About the CV. Is there anything else that we didn't cover?
I think those are the big ones. I mean, we could always do deep dives at some point onto interviewing and, all of that stuff. But I mean, the references, big area. If you're asked to give references, follow the directions. Do you know how many spouses I've spoken to that pretended to be CTMs?
No way.
Follow the
And then
directions.
you start asking questions and they're like, hold on.
I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. You'll hear this mumble in the background.
Like
Or
what?
they're on speaker, or they're on speaker. If you're not doing a video interview, don't go on speaker. I know you want to take notes. You honest people out there, you want to take notes. But you know what I think is that you've got it on speaker so the person who's feeding you the answer can hear the blooming question.
This is what the fraudulent industry is doing to us. Now everything is like, are you really are you really like having technical issues? Are you really just put me on speaker?
Right?
Because it's crazy. So please, fraudulent people, stop. I mean, you're just really like making us
Yeah.
paranoid. You're messing up legitimate people who really want a chance. And you're messing up yourself because you might get blacklisted. And you don't even need to. You can be honest. It doesn't matter what industry you come from. You can be honest and still get in.
You can.
Literally.
Do it the right way and then
Do
stay
it
in
the
it.
right way. And yes, like I've helped people that come from other the finance industry. Underwriter switched over. Somebody doing the assisted adult living switched over.
Mhm.
Somebody used to be a teacher, switched over. You can do it the legitimate way. I think the issue is that people want to just jump to
They
CRA
wanna
making
wake up today.
150
Yeah, they
and
wanna
making
wake up today and do it.
150,
Mhm.
and that's the issue. And that is
Mhm.
that's not the way, y'all. You're messing it up for everybody.
Agreed.
So what would be like the last final words that you would give to people that are legit, they're really trying, but to help them not look fake? Because my suspicion is some of them probably aren't getting responses because they look fake. Like some people that, they mention you have the first name and the last initial or no picture. So what
Mhm.
would be your advice to these people to make sure there are fake proof?
Fake proof.
Fake proof.
I really do believe probably the number one thing for us is to have a unified digital footprint, and it does have to go beyond the LinkedIn and the resume matching. It's gotta have something else.
Do
And
you
if you
check
go
other social media platforms?
yeah, if
Mm.
it aligns. But with that being said, we also check other social media platforms and see where you started Verizon on such and such date, and and Radaris, for example, will tell us how many professional licenses you have and if you've ever owned a company and what industry it was in. And I mean, the number of trucking company people that we get apply that have, and the government PPD loans, y'all. You drove Uber and you owned a trucking company and you got PPD loans for both, but you just worked full time at PPD at the same time. So again, it's the unified digital footprint. And we've gotten to the point right now with 60% confirmed fraudulent rate that whenever people come through and they apply, if they do not have a digital footprint, you guys go in the not now bucket. It doesn't mean that we're saying you're fraudulent. It just means that we're not taking a chance on you right now because we can't confirm that you are who you say you are. You've got to be able to prove that you are who you say you are.
That's so Jakia says, yep, I'm a living testimony. I used to be a teacher, but use my transferable skills when getting into the industry. Be honest. Yep, that's the best way.
Mhm.
Honesty. So digital footprint, that's
Digital
the main
footprint.
thing.
That's the main thing.
And when you say digital, we're not just talking about LinkedIn, y'all.
No, it's got to be more than LinkedIn. Anybody can put up a LinkedIn profile. And
Well,
it's gonna be
no,
more than Zoom info too, you guys. I can go create 15 Zoom info profiles in like the next 30 minutes. That does not make it true. It needs to be something valid, like a research site where you've cited or you graduated from college or you were I mean, it's out there. It's very rare that we find someone that doesn't have a digital footprint when they've actually been in the industry.
and if you don't have a digital footprint, I want to reiterate that in and of itself is suspicious in 2023.
It is.
So that's a problem. Like you are literally at this point just you don't exist. So that's an even bigger problem. Like what is going where have you been and what have you been doing?
Like I said, I mean, all of a sudden it's like, bam, he's there and he's got over 500. He's sending me these LinkedIn. And I'm like, who are you and how do you know me? Where did you come from?
Yeah, so keep that in mind too, especially the people that might be on YouTube or Facebook that's listening. Because I have had clients where we have literally spent months just working on their thoughts about getting on LinkedIn. And they're scared and terrified for multiple different reasons about just showing up on LinkedIn. Um, so it's a thing. People, for whatever reason, don't have a LinkedIn profile. But in 2023, if you don't and you want to be in our industry, it's suspicious.
And for women, I've heard this too, to where you had women that have been stalked or they're worried about whatever. Um, you know, I still operate under Angela Roberts, but I'm married. I have a different last name now. I just never changed my digital footprint. So, for women, I think it's a little bit easier to still use Angela Roberts versus Angela Bryan or Angela whoever. And then whenever you're going after the job and your resume can say Angela Roberts Bryan. And so you can make it very clear that you're the same person. And then the digital footprint that can follow can still be found. There are ways to still very transparently do it, even if you're worried about a stalker or an ex-husband that was abusive or whatever your personal situation is. But you can't not do it. You have to get out
Yeah,
there. You
you
have
do.
to. Hmm.
You really do. It is, I guess some might say it's unfortunate that that's the way the industry is going, not just our industry, job searching in general.
Hmm.
But it's like one of those things where you either like get on board or you just get left behind.
I agree. And it's
Honestly.
unfortunate. I agree with you. But you know what? Life is not fair. And the challenges that we're given are a lot of times divine and spiritual. You got to figure out a way to work through it so that
Yeah,
you can move to the next level. If you've got a desire to do this role, this is the gate.
yeah. Someone says, I think this is Valerie again. I don't know why it doesn't show her name. It says, I had bounty hunters looking for another Valerie Ponder who was wanted for bank for oh my God. And they found me on LinkedIn.
Did you ask them to split the bounty with them? I mean, those types of things are going to happen. I don't know how you stop it, right? But But and the other flip side of that is whenever someone does a digital footprint analysis, they're going to find the Valerie that was the bank fraud person.
They
But
might.
but you know what? I mean, you all you can do is control you. Be honest, be open, be transparent. Build a relationship with the individuals that are trying to help you move to that next level. That's all you can do. Do your best,
Yeah.
and everything else will fall together.
It will. It will. It just trust the process and it really
Mhm.
will.
Yeah.
Um, that's what it boils down to. Don't
Mhm.
think you have to fake it. Don't think
Agree.
you have to make up stuff. Don't think that it's impossible for you to get in by just being yourself. Cause that's a lie. That's not true.
Mhm. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, we've been on for 2 hours, so I will wrap this up. Oh, one last thing. She said, then there is the Valerie who sold meth. It's a lot of Valerie Ponders out there that's doing some things, right?
Oh, Lord, Valerie.
Poor Valerie, right? Your name is popular.
Well, make
Wow.
sure you got a real buttoned up photo,
Yeah,
right?
but
Make sure
there's
you got a real
still
buttoned up
ways.
photo.
Going back to what you said about the digital footprint, if they really look, they could still decipher the meth Valerie from the bank fraud Valerie from the clinical research
Boolean
Valerie,
searches,
right?
all recruiters know how to do Boolean searches, and,
Yeah,
we always start out with the name, and then we always fine tune it, the name
yeah,
and clinical or the name and, whatever. I mean, it's, you know, again, I mean, I'm assuming you're working with good recruiters, and that may not always be the case, but there are definitely ways to fine tune searches to narrow in on
yeah,
the industry as well as the person.
yeah. And maybe that's another topic we can talk about one day too, Boolean searches, because that's
Mhm.
something that I work with on my clients. And everybody that I talk to, nobody even has heard the word Boolean.
Mm.
So, which is for people that don't know, it's Bool
EAN.
EAN.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just look it up because that will help you fine tune your searches for jobs, help you fine
Mhm.
tune your searches for recruiters and connections.
And
Um,
Chrome's got advanced search capabilities to where if you don't know Boolean, you can actually go into the advanced search capabilities and say, I want to look on LinkedIn
yeah,
with jobs titled this, with this, that, or the other, and it'll help fine tune it for you as
yeah,
well.
it will.
Mhm.
LinkedIn sort of kind of has that feature built in too, where you can use the
Mhm.
filters to narrow it down.
Mhm. And
Um,
then you get an email, a magical email every day telling you all the jobs that just got
yeah,
posted that match your
yeah.
criteria.
So, check that out too, guys, because a lot of times people they'll tell me there's no jobs, they can't find any jobs, and then we get on a call, and then I like find 10 for them in like 2 seconds, and it
Mhm.
boils down to they just don't know how to search.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's another thing maybe we could talk about at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
Are we
yeah,
able to do like in this type of a venue, like a screen share to where we could
we
do
are,
a LinkedIn
we
live
are.
and
Yes, this is why I was saying we could maybe use Randall CV and do that live because we can screen share, um and we can still have us both showing, like, it's a lot of things you can do. It's pretty
I
cool.
like
I
that
think.
idea, and then we can show them, so here's a resume and we can critique it, and then we can look at the LinkedIn profile
Yeah,
and then maybe talk about where they need to batch better or what's
yeah,
perfect about it. I could probably black out some that are really awful, and we can show those as well, and what the
yeah, what
skills.
not to do.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
why the skills are important and, on LinkedIn and, why your tagline is important
yeah,
and what, all the different things that you can do to get found better on LinkedIn. And then, yeah, we could take a couple of minutes to show some of the Boolean search
yeah,
capabilities or advanced search or LinkedIn, just setting up those searches so you get it in your email every single day.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sounds like another good one,
I
right?
told you were gonna get sick of me before it was all over with.
No, this is great. People love it. They're getting information, which is the whole point, right?
Mhm.
We want people in the industry that are the people that quality people in the industry. So this is good. Because if you're listening, well, I guess some fake people could be listening. But most people, they're listening because they want to get this information because they want to, get in the right way or stay in or what have you. They just want this information for themselves. They aren't trying to, you know, trick the system.
I've thought about that so many times when writing these articles and publishing them, is that I'm giving the keys of the kingdom to individuals who want to be fraudulent. But I also want to help the people who just really genuinely
Yes,
need the help, and I wanna help the hiring managers know how to arm themselves
that's
against it.
another thing too.
So you gotta take the good with the bad, right?
Yeah, because like you make a good point. Because not only do candidates need this information, but on the other end, hiring managers, even some recruiters, they need this information
That's correct.
as well. So you're right. You're right. Well, I guess we'll figure out how to piece that one together so we can do the live and the resume and all
That'd be
that.
fun. Yeah, yeah, I'd like to
Yeah,
hear
that'd
that.
be awesome. Alicia says, I love these videos. It's helped me tremendously.
Oh,
Thanks for
good.
letting us know, Alicia.
Yay. Yay.
Yeah, because if they love them, then it might be something that we can figure out how we can maybe keep this up.
Yeah, yeah. As long as we've got topics, I say we keep talking.
Yeah, because nobody else is doing this, so this is great.
Mhm.
So next week we have what?
Oh, let me see. What is it
The
next week?
secrets to success or something like that, I think.
Oh, that is but guys, y'all need to join this too, because I know it's a topic of the secrets of a successful professional woman, but a lot of the things that I think that we can talk about, starting your own business, when do you decide to go into contracting, what does that mean, and how do you position yourself, and how do you balance your family? I mean,
Yeah,
more and more you got men who are just as much a part of the household running as women are, and
absolutely.
and I know there are the differences in the way a female looks at, things versus a man. So we could talk a little bit about the personality differences and the blockers that feed into the two different sexes, and how, it might mean something to you and not to somebody else or
Yeah,
whatever. But I think, moving into a profession is tough for anyone to be able to balance. My mama's voice is always in my head saying, you can have anything you want. Well, what she never told me is you can't have it all at one time. So you gotta figure out how you're gonna piece it all together, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a good conversation for men to join as well. Don't just think
Mhm.
it's only for women.
Yes.
Because this is something that can help everybody.
Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
so yes, I'm excited about next week.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So,
Yay.
awesome.
Well, I guess that wraps up our session today. We were on for what? We're going on 2.5 hours now. And I always say it's gonna be an hour, don't I? And it never is. I try. I do try. Um,
It just screams by. We just
it
go.
does. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Miss Jasmine. So much fun to
Yes,
talk to you.
it is. It is. We've started something here. So yes. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
All right. Thanks. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.